Hi, everybody. Good morning to the colleagues connected from the Americas, and good evening to people on this side of the ocean. As we all know, the world is facing a global emergency. More than 4 billion people are locked in their homes, and many of us, our families and friends, are having a hard time. We're all adapting to this dramatic change. We believe, although, that this is a unique moment to take time to think on how we can learn from this situation from 2 points of view. First of all, on how we can improve the situation in this current period. Second, how we can leverage on this experience to improve for our future. We're in the middle of a big transition, a great evolution, which actually is different from what we have experienced in the past. It's not about disruptive technology. It's not about a new competitor or a new business model. It's a bigger change. It's something that is leading companies to dramatic changes, to ensure speed of reaction, to empower people and their employees more and more, to think at new digital touchpoints and new customer journey, adapted to the new scenario and clients' expectations. All of this requires also an evolution in organization, new ways of working, and a strong leadership skills. In light of this situation, we decided to launch a set of future talks, and this is the first one, as a collective moment to think together about the changes we have to face now and for the future, both for our clients and also for us. So let's warm up by collecting your state of mind. So please connect to menti.com and type the code that you can see on the screen and type the word that best represents your state of mind. In the meantime, let me introduce you to the moderator of this first talk, which is Andrea Geremica, who probably you have already met since he has been our speaker at EnelX Day in 2019. Let me just briefly tell you something about Andrea. Andrea is Director of European Institute for Innovation and Sustainability, Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship Master Degree at Rome Business School, and Adjunct Professor of Lewis and Lumsa University. He attended Singularity University in Silicon Valley and the Harvard Business School Executive. So please, Andrea, the video is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Alessandro. It's a real pleasure to be here with really all of you. And I'm very happy really to be able to talk and read all of you connected from all over the world. A lot of people, so I'm so happy. To be honest, I will not moderate this talk just by myself. And in fact, there will be a very good artist with us, Roberta, to keep us company with her creativity. So, hi, Roberta. And, oh, yeah, of course, ciao. It's Italian, but I'm pretty sure that all of you will understand the meaning, and hi in English, perfect. And Roberta will get the hard task to describe in 45 minutes everything that will happen in this chat, in this talk. So basically, I want to just say something before introducing our guest. And I want to just say that we are really many of us. So for this reason, you have to feel yourself not guest, but protagonist. So feel free to chat, to write everything that you wanted. And we will be our best to take your questions and bring it to the guest, Luciano. Unfortunately, really, a lot of you again. So just one tip, make the question short and really forgive us if we will be not able to bring every question online. But of course, it will be absolutely helpful that you're going to keep writing and sharing your thoughts and your questions. So this is the time for me to introduce now our guest. And so I'm really happy to introduce this guest because he's one of the most brilliant thinker, in my opinion, of our time. And I will welcome Luciano Floridi.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hi, Luciano. Or ciao. Like, I mean, ciao. Now it's something that we can say in Italian. So before to leave you the floor, I want to just say something about you, just like a really short bio to describe your role. So Luciano Floridi is a professor of philosophy and ethics of information at the University of Oxford, where he directs even the digital ethics lab of the Oxford Internet Institute. He's also Turing Fellow and chair of the data ethics group of the Alan Turing Institute. So welcome, Luciano.
Thank you for the invitation. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
So, before to start with the first question, I would love to be back for 1 second to the question that we asked to our guests, our public. So, anxious, to be honest, is really a word that we are seeing really common, because when the word is really big, it means that you answered and you typed that word really often. Disoriented, but we have many enthusiasts, hopeful, curious, worried. And how are you, Luciano? How is going for you? How is your state of mind today?
Well, I'm in actually a privileged state of mind, not just because of this meeting, of course, but because as an academic, we are quite used to live by ourselves. So it is not such a difficult time for us as it is for many people around us. I wouldn't be saying anxious, actually, but quite curious, perhaps, about what is going to happen, and especially what we can do today to make sure that the right things happen tomorrow. I heard too many people talking about trying to guess the future, and I really don't like guessing the future. I like, forgive me for the catchphrase, I like to build it if I can. There is no future to guess. There is only a future that you start preparing today. So I'm quite curious about what we can do today to make sure that the future is a little bit better of the past we left behind.
Well, Luciano, so let's get through and let's start to talk about the future. So I have one first question for you, and it's basically that we moved up really quickly from the deception of digital transformation to the disruption of the digital transformation. And everywhere, almost everywhere, we are reading that, okay, the society of the future will be absolutely different from the past. There will be a pre-COVID and a post-COVID. But actually, what is going to really change in our society in the future? The most important changes for you?
Well, there are certainly a lot of changes happening under our eyes. And inevitably, some things that we were used to take for granted in the past will not be there tomorrow. I would be a little bit cautious on how many changes will last. Some of the things that we're doing today, we're doing them because we have to. I was joking this morning with one of my students saying that, everything will be digital, everybody will be online, we will not be traveling, etc., etc. Well, as we were joking with my student this morning, the truth is that a lot of people will not wait long enough to throw the computer away and just get done to some socializing. So let's be careful about too many assumptions on points of no return. Having said that, I think that some of the things are going to change, and we will explore some of them today. Certainly the digital will be part of our daily life much more intrinsically than we have seen so far. My curiosity, to go back to the previous point, is to understand how far we want to push this process and who owns the development of this process. So, as it were, what is going to change, but above all, who owns the change? And that goes back to companies, work, social and political changes, as we will explore today, I hope.
So basically, it's something that we're going to see that probably was supposed to happen, but is going to happen really, really fast instead. But one thing that I noticed is that basically we are just moving like what was working offline online. And sometimes it's a paradox, isn't it?
Yes, it's a bit strange. Some time ago, I coined this word Onlife for the European Commission to talk exactly, years and years ago, to talk about the mixing up of online and offline, digital and analog. And it was a reaction to the view at the time, I'm talking years ago, when people would either say, the digital is just a fashion, internet is not going to take, etc. And then someone else saying, no, it's everything, it's going to change everything, we'll all live virtually online, etc. Well, it's obviously is a mix of the two. The question is how we mix the two properly. And in this transformation, as you were saying, the details are crucial. And since we are in a context where we want to talk about business and enterprises and entrepreneurial efforts to transform the world, well, how exactly do we want to exploit this Onlife experience, this mixing up properly? It's a question of design, another topic, I guess, for today or maybe for the future, if we have time.
So I will invite all the audience to write and type every question they want about what you are saying. But I want to go again about this topic that you mentioned, because it's really interesting. You said Onlife. That actually is a perfect mix between not probably just online and offline, but it's a new dimension. It's a mix.
Yes, as you were saying before, today we live literally these days, because of the pandemics, we are spending too much time online, too much time not socializing, etc. It's not what I meant by the Onlife experience. The Onlife experience is a bit like, if I pass me the metaphor, is where the river and the sea mix. So asking whether the water there, where the river and the sea are coming together, is salty sweet like the river or the sea, is not understanding where you are. It's called brackish water in English for a reason. I mean, it's where the mangroves grow, and we increasingly are like mangroves. No, metaphorically speaking, of course, living where these two things mix together. So a small example, again, for everybody, think in terms of the legal system and territoriality. We used to think in terms of the law is where the nation reaches its borders. So my place, my rules, your place, your rules. And we've been living with that for centuries. Of course, with the digital, there's also a whole other dimensions where essentially it doesn't matter where you are, because it's not a matter of borders or territoriality. So the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, applies everywhere, no matter where you are, if the data are European. So it's no longer doing things here or there, but with what and how. Now, these are transformations that we're going to see increasingly taking place in this Onlife experience.
So it's really interesting because you're even describing a world where basically we're living just right now, but it's a world that we have to somehow improve, because we are always calling this moment, this period, smart working. But it is really smart, or is too much working? Because as you said, probably analogic is driving and is helping the digital world. But we just moved almost everything that was working and everything that we were doing offline directly on online. So we have to reconsider the smart working, because just right now it seems to me really like a lot of work and less smart. So how we will change this, in your opinion, in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're right. And I hear people talking about what we're doing now as smart working. No, it's just teleworking. That's a different complete thing. It's just that instead of doing it in my office, I'm doing it in one way or another, adapting, organizing at home, possibly with my own devices, arranging things in one way or another. That's not smart working. I think that if there's anything like just one factor, there are many, is rethinking in terms of responsibility, purpose, delivery. There's a whole barrage of things that need to be reconsidered with smart working. But if it's one point, perhaps more philosophical, if I may, that makes the difference with the past, it's not space, it's time. It's not where I am, but when I can do what that makes the real difference. So I could be doing smart working even in the office, if the office is open 24/7 and I can go there when I want, as I want, and, for example, take advantage of the facilities. Now, as an academic, I'm used to that. Our library is open 24/7. I can do smart working by going to the library when I want. Now, that is managing time differently. It's not space. In fact, if anything, space is going to be a little bit on the losing side, because we are all concentrating around the same cities all over the world, from Sao Paulo all the way to Tokyo. So I would say smart working, think about a change in time rather than space.
Well, Luciano, we will get back to this topic. It's really interesting because you described actually a job as a time, not as a space. And so we have to work more to reach goals and not to reach hours. So we will get back to this topic. But there is a question, the first question that I would like to show, and is Domenico, that basically is bringing a topic that you already discussed in your book. And in the fourth revolution, you shaped hypotheses about politics and citizens. So how COVID can impact the politic and our life as citizens?
Well, thank you, Domenico. That's a difficult question. Again, just to be short, because we don't have much time, I think politics today is being further polarized by the crisis. We can see where bad politics and populism is doing incredibly drastic damage. Think about Great Britain, United States, Brazil, just to be clear. And mind that my in-law are from Brazil, so I'm talking in a way about family business as well. Countries where populism has been rampant, and therefore the inability to take seriously a crisis like this has been staggering. Now, think in terms of good democracies, decent places, and it's not just the Scandinavians as usual, but also Italy, France, Spain, Greece, many other European countries where things have been done with sacrifice, decently, with mistakes, of course, but with the population coming along with the politicians and the companies and so on. There is where politics may actually improve. So think of, I need my hands at the moment, think of the pandemics as polarizing the good and the bad. The good gets a little bit better, the bad gets a little bit worse. And I'm afraid that we're going to see more of that even with companies. Good companies will come out reinforced from this crisis. Bad companies with a bit dodgy, still struggling, will probably go under.
So, Luciano, is again about speed, even when we talk about business, because we saw a lot of important companies buy and acquire small companies, sometimes because they want to get something from them, sometimes because they want to just get rid of competitors. Yeah. So, in your opinion, we will see like this speed even like faster than before?
Well, I think we will see a lot of speed once the crisis starts getting a little bit dramatic, less dramatic than it is at the moment, a little bit better. There is another point maybe to be made on speed. How do you buy the time required by being fast? Planning. You can go fast and really fast if you have planned carefully before. The better the plan, the speedier the realization, the implementation. What I'm worried about is speed without planning. Speed without planning is the irresponsible guy who's just driving on a motorway. But a company that has a good planning now, and the time is available now to do some serious thinking, then once out of the crisis, will be able to go fast with guidelines, security levels in place. So paradoxically, as you were, the more we think now, the deeper the reflection and the planning, the faster you can go in the future.
It's really interesting because it's actually that even we're talking a lot about innovation around these days. It's obvious. We're always saying that innovation is the drive force that will drive out probably from the crisis, all companies, all our society. But actually you said that innovation without governance is just chaos.
Oh yeah, I mean, the innovation that we have learned in the past was, pass me this expression, was a teenager thing. It was beautiful and irresponsible, like a teenager. It was break it fast, break it often, or something like that. And I, for professional reasons, have interacted with people who had that as a slogan repeatedly. And you had to explain to those people, once you have 2 or 3 billion people one click away from your company platform, you can't break anything. If anything, you need to be extremely careful, because anything you break is broken 2 or 3 billion times every day. So I think that the innovation that we would like to see in the future is an innovation that speaks more the language of design and less the language of trial and error. Trial and error is something that nature can afford by destroying species for millennia, for millions of years. Well, that's not the kind of evolution we want to have in our life. Design, that requires intelligence, planning, foresight, the ability to see what might be the case, what the best opportunities are at hand. More design, less trial and error, and then we can see companies playing that good citizen role that we want to have them having, hopefully, out of the crisis. On that point, I hope we'll be able to come back, but I would like to see a more socially responsible corporate attitude around the world. And it's not because we were crazy before, we were just teenagers. It's time to grow up.
It's really a good word that you mentioned, the responsibilities. And actually, there is a question really interesting about responsibility, and is Silvio Camarelli that asks us, what is the best way to approach our professional responsibilities in smart working?
That's a difficult question. So I'm not sure I'm going to thank Silvio for it, but it's an important question. Now, responsibilities come in many flavors, and as someone who works in ethics, you may imagine the debate. But I think there's one particular kind important for our conversation today, especially within sort of a business work environment, and that's the responsibility that is given by default. There are a few things that make people feel in charge, and immediately, forgive me for the playing with words, responsible, as being given responsibility to begin with. Contexts where responsibility is not given because there's a mistrust, but there are also contexts where, especially in working conditions, where that responsibility would never be acquired, would never be given, and therefore would never build the trust required. So what I normally suggest in other contexts with the other companies is like trust first, and in case reconsider. Give responsibility first, and then in case reconsider. Don't do the other way around. Don't wait for or expect that trust and responsibility are earned or acquired. If you do that, they will never get there in the first place. So responsibility to me is something that is a moral character kind of virtue, and it is something that people want to have if you give it to them, each of us. If you don't, then you have lost that opportunity and it will not come back. So especially, smart working, etc., think in terms of delegating particular tasks. Well, you have to trust people that they will deliver. And of course, be ready for disappointment, for plan B. But trust first, make the person responsible for that project first. And you know what happens? Most of the times, they will race to the challenge. They will get to the target. You don't do that, you control, you make sure that responsibility is not there in the first place, and the delivery will be most unlikely.
Another really important word that you mentioned that I will write down is trust. But since that we already moved back to the topic of work and smart working, well, I would really love to introduce another question for our audience. So let's get back to our Mentimeter. So you know by now how to do it. So we have to go to menti.com, use the code 666340, and basically just tell us what do you think about and what you really are dreaming about the work of the future. So we have 5 different possibilities. The first one is 3 days a week in the smart office. Second, offices as completely different physical spaces. We have the third, working from home most of the time. Employers supporting us in creating home offices. This is a really important and nice, in my opinion, possibility, because it's really about the future. And the last one, back to the office, but with flexible hours. So you can use your browser or your smartphone, and you can easily go into ask this question. But I will, of course, go with you, Luciano, to talk about, in your opinion, how we will change offices, time, and even spaces.
Yeah, I mentioned time as perhaps the the most important variable. Space is what digital technologies have eroded significantly. It's often irrelevant where you are to do something. You may be present somewhere and located elsewhere. This detachment of presence and location is what qualifies the digital intrinsically. Think just for a moment about a bank. So why branches of bank are closing down? Because they were designed where presence and location were the same thing. You had to go there to do something as a customer or as an employer. Now that this is detached, you don't need to have that particular building, and either that building acquires a different sort of purpose, or it's useless. You may as well sell it. So if you look at the statistics of branches of banks in the United States, are decreasing regularly year after year, and that's just normal. But back to the point that you were making, space, time, both one more important than the other. I think time is the key here. But I would like to see in the sort of analysis that we are running as we speak, that sort of porous interchange between office and home, so that there is a sense in which the office is my space, and I can bring that space back home, or vice versa. I think there's a sense in which people sometimes don't feel that they own their working space. It's not mine. It's someone else. I go into someone else's space and I leave that space as soon as I can, or if I don't have to be there. Now, that is already something that tells you something is not quite right. But if the time changes, if I can go whenever I want, as I want, if I want, then all of a sudden the space becomes my own. I own it. So imagine something like the analogy here. I hope I'm not confusing everybody with ebooks on Amazon. We don't own them to the extent that you can't sell them to someone else. Essentially, you rent them forever, and yet you feel that is yours. Why? Because the time is the difference. You can use it as much, as long, whenever you want. That time variable means that the actual physical ownership is less important. Now imagine an office that you own, quote unquote, in terms of time. Anytime, whenever you want, if you want, as you want. Well, it really doesn't matter whether that belongs physically to a company, it's just being rented out, is it something that accidentally the company has decided to use for a couple of weeks. So that seems to me something that we should reconsider in terms of smart working. So I'm a bit worried when I hear, and I close here, oh, it should be 3 days a week. Well, what if that week I need 4? And if what that week I need 0? Flexibility is the key in terms of time, so that the space belongs to me and the work becomes something that I enjoy, that I want to do, for which I'm responsible. See above.
See what you are really saying about time, because it's about ownership. If I'm the owner of my time, I'm the owner of these spaces, because if I can decide by myself when I have to go to the gym, when I have to go to the supermarket, in that case, I'm going to see the office like my space. But if they are going to tell me you have to arrive at this time and you have to leave at that time, there will be never my space. And it's, again, not about spaces, but it's about time. And exactly. It's really interesting, this point, even because it will affect everything. And for this reason, I want to introduce another question that Alessandro Servus made. Basically, Alessandro is asking us, COVID could impact mega cities trends? Because if we are going to change completely the way we are working, we will affect everything, from food to mobility to environment. So we're going to change these trends.
So the answer here is a mix, yes and no, I'm afraid. The reason being that if you look at the tendencies of how megacities are developing, there is little controversy about their growth year after year after year. The calculation, more or less, is by 2025, so around the corner, 75% of the human population will be living in mega cities with millions and millions and millions and millions of people. I mean, with tens of millions of people. I'm referring to Sao Paulo because when I went there the first time many years ago, it was a staggering experience. It was my first mega city as such back in Brazil. So inevitably, we tend to concentrate as humans around social gatherings and therefore bigger and bigger cities, because that's where the services are, but also the entertainment, the job opportunities, the food, and so on. Now, having said that, the tendency of the digital should be the opposite. It should be the one that puts us anywhere we want, precisely because the question is not where I am, but when I do things, and I could do things at different times, etc. Now, a mix and match of these two things would require what you were saying before, a more serious control of my own time. If I know that I can leave, say, half of the week, 20 kilometers away from downtown, well, then I can have a different house. But if I know that I have to go there every day, if I know that the school of my children forces me to bring them there every day at their time, well, then synchronization of lives requires co-presence in the same space. Now, you break the synchronization, you break the co-presence, you make megacities a little bit more flexible. The tendency will be there. We'll still be gathering around, socializing essentially more and more, but in a way that is more flexible and therefore also less expensive. Remember that people these days now live according to their means, closer or more distant from the center of town, depending on what they earn and what they can afford. Now, that would be a little bit less unfair if you were a matter of flexible timing.
So it's again another really good point, and there's another point of view that is driving us, again to another really good probably thoughts, because for a long time we were talking about soft skills. Then we moved really quickly to the digital world, and now, so what's about soft skills? Because there is another question that I was reading in the internal chat, and Alessandro is going to ask you, should you pick just one single soft skill to succeed in this period? What will be? I don't know if probably we lost the connection with the professor. So I will drive this question in order to wait that Luciano is going to reconnect to you. So if you should pick just one single soft skill, what will happen? What will be this soft skill that you will want to underline that is really important for you? Just use the chat, and okay, I see that there is flexibility. So flexibility in terms of where and when to work will have an impact on urban and the transport. Okay, do you think this is a question that I will certainly send it to Luciano as soon as that is going to reconnect. But if you have to just pick one word and say just one soft skill that for you is really important in this period that you're working from home, even about team building, you know, that is, we are missing the moment that we're taking a coffee with our colleagues and we are making jokes, we are making fun. And so if it's going to be just one soft skill that you are missing even from the real world, what will be? So use again the chat, and I will go again to the drone, because in my opinion we have something. Resilience. Resilience is Juan Ramos Gonzalez is a really important, in my opinion, word. In Italian, we are not using resilience a lot because probably it's just a word that we adopted not a long time ago. But okay, time management, I see, and the communication and connectivity. So EnelX will be so happy about it. And all the skill described in extreme. So, of course, I will say that resilience is probably the first and the most important word that even listening Luciano is, I know that Luciano probably is back because I heard the sound. Let me Yeah.
Sorry, my computer decided that enough of all this philosophy.
Don't worry, because to be honest, I asked this question before actually you were going to say, and you were going to tell your point of view. I asked to the chat, and they are going to answer: flexibility, connectivity, adaptation, empathy. Adaptation again, and the planning, flexibility, and adaptation. So adaptation, flexibility, and resilience are the most common three. What's your point of view, Luciano?
Yeah, I think that I might have a bit of an old-fashioned view here, but let's see if I can convince you that it's still valid. Take flexibility, metaphorically speaking. You don't become flexible unless you have done a lot of exercises. There is a ability to be gentle, to be light. Imagine someone, a ballet, someone who shows you how you can move like a butterfly. The amount of technique and exercise and training that lightness is required is staggering. So I have the impression that sometimes, especially with soft skills, they are sold as if they were the easy ones to acquire, the things that you first get, and then the hard skills will come. To me, is almost the opposite. The soft skills of a great piano player are the outcome of a decade of really hard work. So what looks like simple, gentle, the ability, for example, to socialize, to communicate, to empathize, to understand other people's needs, etc. Those are not necessarily soft skills as in easy, they come anytime. They're probably the outcome of years of training, exercise, courses, ability, experience. So I would expect them to be with people, shall we say, more my age, hopefully, than with a young me who had zero soft skills, who was brutal, didn't understand the world, and so on. So if anything, I've been, on a personal basis, acquiring soft skills as I go along because I get more training. So if we see soft skills that way, then they are crucial. But let's understand when they are acquired and how they are acquired, as opposed to thinking, oh, these days it doesn't matter, no, the hard skills are so overrated. No, they are not. Those are the hard training, the competence, the expertise that you need in order to be able to do something like becoming a great manager. So that seems to me the right perspective. I hope it's not too old-fashioned.
No, it is not, absolutely. And actually, I have a lot of questions for you, but there is something that I want to underline again about soft skills, because we have a lot of comments even in our private chat. And basically, it's like we have to learn how to unlearn, because if we have to think about the future, probably we have a lot of biases about our present. So when we are really thinking about the future, probably the first step that we have to do is to unlearn. It is correct.
That is correct, unfortunately, because it's very difficult. Now, people should really realize that there is a learning first. So don't give me the unlearning without learning first. So we need to understand, and then being able to drop that understanding behind. It's a bit like when you learn how to drive. There's a stage when you're learning how to drive mechanically. First this, first that, one, two, and then you have to concentrate and think, and where is this, where is that? That becomes a natural afterwards. In a way, you unlearn all that mechanism that brought you there. Now, this going full circle, so learning, unlearning, and being able to do things naturally, but with an open mind, that's very difficult. Let me just sort of concentrate on this for a moment, because I think it's quite crucial. This also comes, not that I want to be religious in any possible way, I'm not, but the New Testament has this beautiful thing about if you don't become or go back to being children, you will never go to paradise, but you never enter. So, well, this returning or going back to being naive is crucial, but it's the naivete or the ingenuity, in essence, of someone who has gone full circle. So you have learned, you have become smart, you have done the hard work, and at some point, the easiness in dealing with the world becomes an acquired habit. Now, this is a lifetime exercise. It's not easy to acquire. But if I may sort of have a more Italian kind of analogy here, is a big the difference between a coffee machine, a mocha, that is empty because it never made a coffee in the first place. You don't want to drink the first coffee. It's disgusting. But then you make a lot of coffee with that machine, and when you finally take the machine, it's still empty, but not because it never made any coffee, but because all the coffee has been made. And so when you make finally the good coffee, it's because of a memory, as it were, of the old coffee, the patina of the old coffee there making a difference. Now, that seems to me the right analogy. It's almost like a memory of something that you have unlearned, and therefore you can think something new. Now, the difficulty, and this is dealing with top managers sometimes in some contexts, how do you think something new? How do you get out of the box? It's very difficult.
It's really interesting. Again, this example, I love it. I will use it every time I can about the mocha. I really love it. And it's so Italian, so I feel that is really my example. But about new, because we were talking about new, we were talking about ownership. So Javier is going to ask about ownership. And he said that this is going to makes me think on the future of mobility and if we really need to own a car in the future.
I don't think so. I mean, we will. I mean, the world is so different in so many corners. Any generalization is stupid. But philosophically speaking, if you allow me that, the sense that in order to use something, you need to own it, is being eroded. Now, this is typical of the sharing economy, but not only of the sharing economy. I mean, these days, what we used to do, for example, in terms of buying music, I come from a generation which actually bought real physical objects, and you own those objects. They were analog objects, and it would scratch. Now, today, you don't own your music in the same sense. You have constant, regular, reliable accessibility to a service. Now, an economy of ownership to an economy of use is the simple thing that is happening under our eyes. Whether cars will disappear or not, I don't know, and I'm not so sure. But imagine, for example, how much cheaper it would be for some people just to take a taxi every time they have to go somewhere instead of owning a car. Make a quick calculation, and it might actually be cheaper. So along those lines, I think that we are shifting gradually towards an economy and a culture of use, which is a better way of sort of using resources rather than ownership. As they say, I don't need a drill, I need a hole in the wall. Anyone can give me a drill, I drill the hole in the wall, and I give it back to you.
It's good. I have really another question for you, and really we are going to finish because it's impressive, but they told me that we already reached the 45 minutes, and for me was like 10. So I will go with this last question for Professor Flori. That Professor Flori, do you think that losing empathy because of digitalization would bring a boost in terms of productivity? If yes, is really worth it?
I lost half of the question. Sorry, can you repeat it?
Oh, I will ask it to our Regia.
I think I can see it there. Yes.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that we are losing empathy. I don't think that the digital. I know that has been portrayed that way, but we have a very 90s idea of the digital there. It was something that also colleagues from MIT. I don't want to badmouth anybody, but they were wrong. They were presenting the digital as the white boy in front of a computer, pizza, Coca-Cola, playing a computer game. That is so not much reality. Wake up. Welcome to the 21st century. That is me and my parents being able to talk to each other every week, and that is empathy at the digital level. Now, would I be happier to see them in real life? Of course. Can I? I cannot. And therefore, that's better than nothing. But there's a lot of empathy there, despite anything else. Now, remember that people in the past, before all this, they used to have relationships across great distances. Remember, space not being longer an issue, by letters. Was empathy destroyed by letters? Of course not. It was another means to keep in touch. So as long as what we're doing right now, right here, is something that we as humans put us on the same sort of platform, and we know what we're talking, we know we understand each other, There is empathy throughout. And I don't care if it's analog, digital, I can touch you or not. As long as we can have a conversation, we understand our minds, that is the crucial bit. Can be done better? Yes. Is this something okay that we want to have in parallel to anything else? Of course, but that's why I speak of Onlife. And Onlife, empathy will be there. So I wouldn't take the digital as something that destroys empathy, but something that can provide more in terms of other means of being empathic towards everything else, nature included.
Wow, it's really good. In my opinion, it's really worth the closing of this amazing talk. I will go really for like 1 second to see your amazing portrait, because Roberta just right now created, in my opinion, I love it. Oh, there is the mocha. Roberta, really, thank you a lot. I was going to write you like a note, because in my opinion, the mocha was a really amazing example, and the flexibility and Onlife. So I really love it. So I will ask to Alessandro to get back to us, and of course, Alessandro. Yeah, here we are, Alessandro.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Floridi. It was very interesting conversation. And nothing. Basically, I'm glad that we had so many people connected, especially so many questions, interesting questions. This means that we are all pretty much aligned, and we have a lot of things to share, feelings and thoughts. So this is very, very good. Now, I hope that basically people find it interesting themselves and they have some good takeaways, or at least they had some good company staying with us, with Andrea and Professor Floridi. What really I want to do is thank, besides Andrea and Professor, also the PO team, people organization team that make all of this possible. And of course, this is a first initiative. We will launch today a survey to see whether you like the format, whether you like the contents of the format, so that then we can probably build some future talks again, and so meet again in such a way. So thanks again for your attention, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.